So yesterday we see the third module in SpringBoot, right? Here modules we are counting with starters. First we done with the Spring default starter, so here we covered IOC, AOP not covered, but still AOP is part of it, and log libraries included and test libraries included. And if we include web starter, it provides support for both web and REST and microservices with embedded Tomcat also. With embedded Tomcat it is coming, right? And when we use Spring Data JDBC, when we use JDBC,
Sir, I think screen sharing is not done. We don't see screen.
oh yeah, I'm doing it. Okay, yeah, what I was just telling is we covered the basic default starter and web starter, and yesterday we see Spring JDBC starter, which came up with Hikari connection pool. One is provided to us, right, comma default JDBC template also provided to us. Maybe you can try with the NamedParameterJdbcTemplate also. Hopefully that should be available. Okay, JDBC template or NamedParameterTemplate, which are default provided, which are by default provided to you. Just you need to configure your JDBC URL, username, passwords, so that it can create connection pool for you based on the jar file which you added, based on the URL, username, passwords which you given. It will understand which database you wanted to connect, and it will create a connection pool for you. Okay, in case if you want to customize your connection pools, you can do that as well, right? Whichever available connection pool from your application properties file, you can use it. Apart from Hikari, if you want to go with any specific connection pool like Apache, DBCP, or any other connection pool, that you can try. Okay, so not only limited to Hikari. In case if you want to customize your connection pool, as we discussed in the Spring, right, you can do that here as well. Or else maybe you can override, right, or else you can override connection pool. You may create at the rate being simple connection pool. There you can create your required data source, so that the built-in connection pool will be compromised. Okay, yeah. Now we can use for ORM integration, right, Spring Data JPA we can use. Okay, Spring Data JPA, which is included Hibernate based ORM. It will use internally, which means Hibernate implementation it will use with no code pattern. Okay, with the no code pattern, this module is useful to implement ORM based DAO classes. Okay, here you can implement your repository classes using the Spring Data JPA with the no code. Okay, so we call it as no code module. So here you need not implement any code. On the fly it will provide lot of implementation when we use Spring Data JPA for your repositories or DAOs. We call DAOs or repositories, right, to write database classes, to do CRUD operations. So you need not to implement any CRUD operation, Spring Data JPA will provide you implementation. Okay, it will provide you implementation for any entity which you choose. I wanted to do CRUD operations on student table. Just create a student entity. That's it. The remaining job it will take care. That we will discuss now. Okay, I'll show you how Spring Data JPA will work. Let us see how it will function. Okay, how it will function in Spring Data JPA. If I take a use case, okay, a simple CRUD operation, I have a form with few fields. And I want to save this data into database using ORM tool. So backend side, obviously we will have a controller, REST based or a web based, anything that you can have here, so you can read your data. Just a minute. Okay, you can have a business class and you can have a DO class here. Usually how we used to implement DAOs, these DAOs using plain ORM, right? See, if I use plain ORM, here how we used to do this stuff. We used to read data here, or we used to read data into a DTO class, and we used to send a DTO to business, and we used to apply business operations. We used to apply business on our data, and we used to convert this DTO into final. After done with our business, we used to move this DTO data into model or entity, you can call model or entity, right? Let's say it is student data, this is student form, right? Backend side we will create one student DTO class. So this is the first class where data will be populated into this DTO. Your front end data will be populated, and that DTO will be given to controller. Controller will forward the same DTO to business data transfer object DTO. Okay, so once we get that DTO here, we used to fetch data from DTO and we execute our business operations. Then you can populate your DTO data into model or entity, right? Model or entity, and we used to send that model or entity to finally DAO class. There we used to have CRUD operations using HibernateTemplate.save. We used to pass our entity or model here. Into save method we used to pass our model or entity, so that finally it used to save. Finally it used to save your model or entity into required database table. It used to save your record into required database table. If there is a table student, and if the student table is mapped in your entity, right? Where do we map? In our entity classes only, right? Using @table annotations we used to map here in this entity class itself, right? We used to create a student entity bean class with @entity annotation. the rate ID, all the fields here, whichever you have ID, and the remaining fields, name, email, address. So this entity purpose is to achieve CRUD operations in ORM. This DTO purpose is to carry front-end data to till controller or business class. Okay, so using this entity we used to execute CRUD operations on actual database. So first we used to create a model class with entity annotation, table annotations, and we used to map this table or this entity to this table, so that when you execute CRUD operations using HibernateTemplate or session, your data directly is able to save here in this table, right? This is how in plain ORM we used to do CRUD operations. Apart from that, few configurations also we execute, right? We create session factory in a configuration class, and using this session factory we create Hibernate template. All these initializations we do ourselves. Session factory object creation, Hibernate template creation under a configuration class using @bean. We used to initialize them so that we can use them in our code. Wherever you want, you can auto wire them and you can use them. So all this configuration stuff also we should do when we use plain ORM. If you guys remember, this is what we have done in Spring ORM discussion, right? Now if I go with the Spring data, how it is different from this flow, what thing it will reduce, why I am saying no code, means if I go with this Spring data JPA, it will avoid this part. You need not to create session factory, Hibernate template, all this stuff. Just as usual, like in data JDBC, how you given database URL, username, password, the same stuff you need to do here as well. And even you need not to write this DO class. Generally, part of DO class, what we'll implement, all the required CRUD operations we implement: save, update, delete, select, right? Multiple select operations, select by ID, select by email, or select by like, contains. There are so many such we can apply on DO class on our queries, but you need not to write all that stuff here. All the required basic CRUD operations Spring Data JPA will provide for your entity. Okay, what all you need to do is this you can avoid. Okay, so while using Data JPA, you need not to write this stuff and you need not to write this DAO. All that you need to do is just you need to create one entity class. Here instead of DAO, replacement to DAO, what you need to do, one interface you need to provide, right? If I avoid this DAO, as part of this DAO, what I need to do, okay, the replacement for this DAO you will be doing here, you need to create one interface. You need to create one interface. Name it anything, interface. Name anything, student DAO interface or anything, student repository, name it anything, and you need to use implements keyword. Interface can't implement anything, right? Extends keyword. A interface you need to create with extends keyword, and here we have some built-in interfaces from Spring Data JPA. Okay, there is an interface called JPA repository. Okay, there is an interface called JPA repository. Basically we will use this JPA repository for all databases, all SQL databases, particularly SQL databases like Oracle, MySQL, we will use this JPA repository. If it is a MongoDB, there is a different implementation, Mongo repository we have. For all SQL databases you can use JPA repository, okay, like Oracle, MySQL, DB2, anything. So here you need to create a interface, that interface need to extend from JPA repository interface, and here you need to pass two parameters. One is your student entity, whichever entity you created, right? That entity you should pass here, and comma your primary key field you need to pass here, your primary key field data type. If I use ID integer type, I need to give integer here. If I use a string type, I need to put string here. If it is a composite primary key, a separate bean, a primary key bean if you have, you can put that primary key bean here. Okay, so what are all allowed here is your primary key data type. If your primary key is integer or string, you can pass integer or string, or in case of composite primary key, which means more than one primary key, if you have combination, my ID and email both are primary keys, so I can't put two parameters here. Instead what you can do, you can keep these two parameters in a separate bean class, and you can pass that bean here. You can give a bean, primary key bean, composite primary key we call, composite primary key bean. You can pass that composite primary key bean also here. You need to pass your entity, your bean class, which is mapped to table, and the primary key data type. Your entity and primary key data type you should be passing here. And what next? It is an interface. Do I need to implement it? I created interface. In Java, interfaces will not provide any implementations. Just they will have declarations, no implementations. So here you need not to write any code. No code required here. No code required here. Don't write anything here. And what you can do now, this DAO, right, you can auto wire student DAO, you can auto wire here into your business class, and you can use it. You can start use it. You can auto wire your DAO. Which DAO? Student DAO. That interface you can auto wire here. The DAO interface whichever you created, you can auto wire and start using it. This object will be auto wired here into your business class, and you can start using it. How? Interface objects will auto wire anywhere. For interface, at least Java will create object. No, not possible. For this interface, object creation is not possible. So how that object will be auto wired here? Impossible. For interfaces, we can't get any objects. We cannot able to create any objects. So SpringBoot smartly what it is doing, internally it is providing one implementation for you. Here one JPA repository implementation it is providing by implementing your class at runtime. Student to DAO class is implementing during runtime by Spring Data. For you it is implementing a concrete class. For you it is implementing a concrete class. This implementation implemented by JPA. This class is implemented. So whenever you auto wired now, you have your DAO interface reference here. Into that DAO interface, actually this object will be injected. Whichever class it is by default providing implementation class, this object will be injecting here. Are you guys able to getting? Yes. Okay, if you see example, maybe you will realize it. Okay, so when you use Spring Data JPA, when you compare with the plain ORM that we have integrated before, in plain ORM you need to create session factory, Hibernate templates, and you need to auto-wire them into your DAO classes, and you have to write a lot of CRUD operation code, right? If you see examples that we have done in ORM, right, we did that. But now here in Spring Data JPA, you need not to do anything. Just you need to have your entity class, and you need to create two classes you need to write for sure. One is your entity class and one is your interface. One is your interface, and that interface you need to extend from JPA repository interface, and you need to pass your entity and your primary key type here. That's it. You need not to do anything. Implementation will be given by JPA. Implementation will be given by JPA for your interface. You need not to implement any DAO class. You need not to write such code like save operation, update operation, delete operation, selects. You need not to write any code. Just auto-wire this interface wherever you want. Just auto-wire this interface wherever you want. So into that interface, the implementation object by default, which is provided by JPA, that implementation object will be supplied to you. That implementation object will be supplied to you. For how many classes it can do like this? Means you can have any number of DAO interfaces. You can have any number of such DAO interfaces. For all that interfaces, it can provide implementation. Consider you have 100 tables. Create 100 DAO interfaces here. For all that 100 DAO interfaces, it will provide implementation during runtime. You need not to implement anything. As simple as easy. It made everything simple. Basically, where as a developer we struggle little bit means in DAO part only, right? While writing CRUD operations, right? Maybe if you may aware of SQL or may not aware of SQL or this DAO module or a module, so whoever comfortable they might write. But here from Spring Data JPA onwards, you need not to be expert in Data JPA. Even you need not to aware of it. Just if you are aware how to create this entity, that is enough. But for us, while we are learning this Hibernate to use it in our projects, what all things that we need to remember: how to create entity, how to map it to table, how to do configuration in configuration file, how to create a session factory, how to create Hibernate templates. All this stuff we used to learn. But now here what Spring Data JPA made it is, it made it simple. So as this is a little difficult part to you, it taken care of implementation. You need not to provide an implementation, just it is asking to provide me entity whichever you want to map to your table. Just create that entity and create one interface, just putting your entity and primary key type here. I'll take care of all the CRUD operations. Who is saying? Spring Data JPA. Clear? I'll show you one example here. Okay. So this is what we did yesterday, right? Spring JDBC. We added one dependency Spring Data JDBC. That's it. It provided all the Hikari implementation, connection pool, and JDBC template, and we just used it in DAO class. Directly you can auto-wire JDBC template and you can do CRUD operations, or if you want to use data source also, you can auto-wire and you can do CRUD operations. For all that, what we did we created any data source or JDBC template? Means nothing. It created all that. What we did is we just given here our JDBC URL, username, passwords, bus. Okay, let me create a data JPA project, or let me import it. Spring Data JPA. Yeah, if we don't find, then we will create. Okay, just get import it. Just I have same properties here: data source URL, username, password, and HBM to DDL auto option. If you want to create a table, write all the options: create, validate, update. You can put anything here. What I recommend is use validate. Okay, if you put anything else, what will happen is always it will update your schema, or always it will create a new schema. For production, right, these properties are not recommended, putting create or update. Okay, for now it's okay. Now here this is not implemented. Okay, let me create a brand new project. New Spring Starter project. Okay, so Spring Data JPA example. Next, Oracle driver I want to connect with Oracle database, and I want data JPA, search with the JPA. Here you can find Spring Data JPA. Anything else you want just to create a DO means these two are enough. If you want web or REST, then you can include web. Okay, for now I'm just including Oracle driver and JPA bus. Anyway, for with any other module, right, default IOC jar files will be included. Though I added the simple data JPA, will it ignore IOC library means no, it will not work without IOC library. So all the IOC libraries included here. Okay, now Spring Data JPA, this is the project. A main method class, with the POM dependencies, Spring Starter Data JPA dependency added, and Oracle jar file added. Bus. You need to add your DB properties here. Okay, database properties, let's add them. Database URL, username, password. I'm adding here. Okay, so Spring Data Source URL JDBC colon Oracle thin @localhost 1521xc admin. Okay, and default it will allow you to create table. Okay, project created, properties added. Let's create entities. Okay, create a package, com dot rbu dot ems dot model package I am creating. Actually admin dot model. Okay, create model class here. Student entity I am creating. Use @entity. And I want a table name like RBU student JPA something, and my database schema name is system. Here I want a ID in table, private int ID, which is integer type. So if that is a primary key, use @ID. And if you want to generate values automatically, you know, generated value. Here you can use strategy auto. So automatically ID will be generated. Private string, remaining columns, name, email, address, and as usual getters and setters. If you include Lombok, getter setters not required.
Sir, can we have one either many to one or one to one relationship?
Yeah, let's do a plain example. Okay, let's understand how JPA functioning. We will do, okay, if you want we will do with multiple entities. Yeah, so now I have a ID field, name, email, address fields with setters and getters. This is the table that I want. Okay, now what next? I created a entity. Next is create your repository. Package com.rbu.ems.admin.repo package, repo or DAO, create anything. In this repo package, what you need to create?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, in entity you have mentioned a schema equal to system.
Your
So what that
database
means?
schema, Archil I'm using, right? If it is a MySQL, you will have lot of database names.
Okay.
In MySQL, you will have test database, your own database name. You need to refer on which database you want to create this table. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's create a interface. Let's create a interface here. Student interface or student repo, which is interface. Okay, purely a interface we are creating. As I said, right, no DAO implementation required. Extend it from JPA repository interface. You need to pass your student class, comma, what is your primary key data type? Integer. That's it. See, I am not doing anything, just a interface, Kali interface here. Okay, now here lot of implementations, many methods will be provided in default implementation. In your default implementation, right, lot of methods will be provided. One implementation will be given, there lot of methods will be provided to you. Lot of methods will be provided to you. Okay, we will see really is it providing implementations or not. We will see just by calling them here. I'll try to call that repository interface here, and I'll see whether really it is connecting with that table and providing CRUD operations or not. ap.getbean student repository. I'm confident that this is an interface, but let's see whether I can get implementation object or not. So I am expecting here implementation object in this interface. I am asking application context, please give me student repository object. That is not a class to provide a object. What it need to do, whichever internal implementation it is providing, that object will be given to you in the form of interface reference. That is okay. Now here if I call dot repository dot, you can see there are lot of methods it is showing here. This is an interface which we created. This is an interface which we created, and there it is showing lot of methods. There it is showing lot of methods, count, two count methods, multiple delete methods, exist methods, find all methods, get methods, save methods. See, save, count, delete, find. Many methods for doing save operation we have. If you want to save, you can call save method. If you want to delete, you can use delete method. If you want to update also, you can use save method. If you want to update, yeah, no specific update method, you can use save only. If you want to select anything, lot of find methods, find all, find by ID, find one. See how many types we have. Find all, pageable also given if you are applying pagination. Find all with matching expressions. So beautifully given all the method names here it is showing, but you didn't implemented them. Okay, let's call save method and try to pass a student entity. I'll create a student object here and I'll try to save it. Student dot set id not required, as we are asking to generate it automatically. I'll give name here. student dot set email here, student dot set address. Now let's save this student object and see will it function or not. I told you just create a entity and one repository interface so that you can able to achieve the CRUD operations. Execute it. Okay, fair. Sequence does not exist. Table or view does not exist. No problem. It is saying dropping a table. It is saying no table. That is fine. Actually table is not there. You have to create. And the next it is saying sequence. No problem. Finally whether it inserted or not is the question. Go to database and verify. We asked to create a table and insert the data. What is the table name? RBU student JPA. See, your data got inserted. Okay, as first time it was executing your code as table and view does not exist, it is throwing this errors. Sequence does not exist. As a next step it must be created that sequence. Table does not exist, error it given, and in the next step it must create it. So don't worry that your application got a problem. No issue, as first time you are running you are seeing it. If you have already table, already schema, obviously you will not get any error here. Let's say I wanted to, I have already existing table, I don't want to disturb it. So what all you can do is just keep update here. So if any updates required then it will update, else it will keep existing tables schemas as it is. Go here and try to insert one more record. Let's insert one more records. Execute it. See, this time no error. Execution completed. Second record also got inserted. How? I haven't done any database implementations, right? I just created a entity here and I have a simple interface here. Who given me that implementation? I called save method, but I don't have that save method in this interface. If I go no save method, how I'm getting this implementation here means at runtime it is providing implementations to this. If you open implementation, student repo implementation or JPA repo implementation, it is showing multiple implementation types. Okay, if you see repository implementations, JPA repository implementation, see, simple repository, there is a class. Open this class, see, simple repository class implemented from JPA repository implementation. Okay, so just imagine that this class is going to providing implementation to your actual interface. If you go and see the methods, right, here how many methods it is having. Just if I apply collapse all, see what are all methods you have here. Set repository, CRUD method, get, delete, delete, find by ID, find all, count. See how many methods you have here. You all able to see, right? Apply comment. There are so many methods I can see here. So imagine that these methods it is providing you as a default implementation. This is suitable for any type of interface. You may have student interface, you may have employee interface, you may have XYZ interface. Just you need to create your interfaces like this. Just create your interface, extend it from JPA repository interface, pass your entity here with the primary key. Bus, you are done. No need to implement even a single line of code there. You can save it, you can fetch it. See, I have two records. I want to select them. Obviously, you can do that. Student repository dot. If you use count, okay, what it need to give? How many records you have there? Count method. Long count. System.out.println count. Number of records you have in database. See, 2 records. It is showing 2 records there in your database. I want to retrieve all of them and see. Okay, student report dot find all. Call find all method. It will give you list of students. Just iterate over it. Listed out for each. Okay, so you will be having consumer here. System.out.println student. Maybe if you implement a toString method, right, then you can see them. Run as. Here I can see the data, 2 records. What are they? Shravan and Santosh. I have 2 records here. So whatever it is, the operation, right, you can call here. Delete method or select method. We will do full length example later. Okay, so any CRUD operation we can execute here. You can have custom queries also in case if you want. There are 2 types of custom queries you can write. Let's say I want to get student by name and email. Okay, find by student name and email, both matching. Maybe sometimes name may be common for two students, or email may be wrongly entered. So including name and email, I want to get a record. So you can write custom queries. Such queries you will not find here, right? If you want to do any customization, that you can do here. Okay, that you can do here. Let's say list of students I want, I can put here list student, find by name and email, find student by name and email. So you can pass that parameters here, string name comma string email. It will apply internally filter, right? What you are asking here, select star from student where name is equal to something and email equal to something. That is what my intention. Find student by name and email, exactly whatever naming conventions you have, right? If you can use them here, it will work like as you expected. It will generate a query. So let's try this method. We call it as JPQL. Okay, JPQL, you can write your queries this way as well. Okay, let's see, student repo dot find by name and email. So I need to give exact matching name and email. Okay, Shravan and Shravan at Gmail. Yeah, so now what I'm expecting, list of students, maybe one student or many I may get, or directly on this itself I'll apply for each. Okay, yeah, let me comment this too. Yeah, if you see here, your JPQL is executed. Shravan data it is getting using name and email. Just a minute guys, my phone ringing. Yeah, so here like this you can write like queries, right? If you can explore a lot of queries you can write, find student like name, or if you want to filter, right? I have list of names, only that list of names data I want to get. Let's say I have thousands of records here in this database table, right? Thousands of records I have here. I want to filter out 5 records, 5 names I got, that 5 names I want to fetch. So you can have such methods also here. Okay, find by names array, okay, or contains names. So it will understand based on your naming convention, and it can execute a query for you. It will prepare a query, JPQL, it will create a query internally, one SQL query as per your naming convention. It will understand what you want and it will execute it for you and brings the data. Okay, so this is one way. One is just you can use the existing methods from this repository. In case that methods are not sufficient for your scope, For your implementation you can write custom methods like this, and as well as you can have a method with @query also. Okay, so I don't know how to write this naming convention here. I want to put directly query. That is also fine. You can use queries also here. You can put queries also here. The similar method you may write it in a different way. Find student by, okay, whatever query I have, or find student. Query. You can put a query here @query annotation you can use here, and you can put your custom query here. Select a star from student where name is equal to first parameter and email equal to second parameter. Like this also you can keep your query here, from student where name equal to something and email equal to something. These parameters hopefully it will pass here. I believe name and email. Let's see which one works. Find by query. Okay, this query need to bring the data. Okay, whichever query we have above. Same method if I use with the find by query, see, I'm assuming it will work. Yeah. Perfect. So using @query also I can able to fetch the data, right? You can put any method name. If you are not able to write the naming convention methods, that is fine. You can create a simple method and keep your query on top of that method here. Query, you know, from student. What is this pattern? HQL queries, right? Hibernate query language. Just instead of select a star from, you can use simple from student. That's it. And after where you can put any conditions, like conditions, contains conditions, right? Anything you can apply here. And whatever parameters you have here, same parameters you need to give as a method inputs here, so that it will expect this value here and it will pass into your query. Email will be passed here, then it will bring the data. That data it will give you in the form of list. Why I kept list here is, maybe with that same name email, if we have duplicate data, there is a chance that we can get list. That's why I kept list. If you are confident that there is a single record, you can use simple object also, but if it find any duplicate, it will throw you error. Okay, yeah. So yeah, this is all about simple JPA repository. I'll show you Mongo repository also before proceeding to full length example. Okay, just understand. Guys, can you please go on with?
Hello, sir.
Yeah,
hello, sir.
Let me conclude. Can you please go on with?